Kate Morrison stood at the command center window watching the morning sun rise over New Eden's capital city. The sight always filled her with pride, knowing that humans had built this thriving world from nothing but rock and dreams. As the colony administrator, she had overseen the growth from a few thousand settlers to nearly 2 million people calling this place home. The farms stretched beyond the horizon, feeding not just New Eden, but 3 other human worlds in nearby systems. Everything seemed perfect until the alarm started screaming. "Administrator Morrison, we have multiple contacts approaching from the outer system," called out Lieutenant Jenny Walsh from the sensor station. Her voice carried an edge that made Kate's stomach drop. "These ships are huge and they're not responding to our hails." Kate rushed to the main display where dozens of red dots appeared at the edge of their solar system. The computer estimated their size and her blood ran cold. Each vessel measured over 2 kilometers long, and there were at least 20 of them moving in perfect formation toward New Eden. No human ship had ever been built that large. "Get me Captain Sullivan immediately," Kate ordered while studying the approaching fleet. The Colonial Defense Forces consisted of 3 aging frigates and 12 patrol craft that had been sufficient for dealing with pirates and minor threats. Against whatever was coming their way, those ships would be like throwing rocks at a hurricane. Captain Jake Sullivan's face appeared on the main screen, looking as worried as Kate felt. His dark hair showed more gray than it had 6 months ago, and the stress lines around his eyes had deepened. "I'm seeing the same readings from up here, Administrator. My tactical officer estimates those ships could be here within 18 hours at their current speed." "What are our options, Jake?" Kate asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Honestly, not many," Sullivan replied, shaking his head. "I've ordered all civilian traffic to clear the shipping lanes and activated the orbital defense platforms. The planetary shields are charging to full power, but those things out there look like they could punch through our defenses without breaking stride." Dr. Lisa Parker burst into the command center carrying a data pad and looking pale. As the colony's chief scientist, she usually maintained perfect composure, but now her hands shook as she handed Kate the pad. "I've been analyzing the sensor data and cross-referencing it with intelligence reports from the outer colonies. Those are Vorthon ships." The name sent chills through everyone in the room. For months, rumors had spread about alien attacks on the frontier worlds. Entire colonies had gone silent without explanation, leaving only debris fields and empty planets behind. The few survivors who escaped described massive ships and ruthless warriors who showed no mercy to human civilians. "How certain are you, Lisa?" Kate asked, hoping against hope that the scientist might be wrong. "The energy signatures match perfectly with wreckage recovered from the Centauri station attack," Lisa replied grimly. "These aren't explorers or traders, Kate. This is an invasion fleet." Jake's voice crackled over the communication link. "Administrator, I'm moving my ships to intercept. We might not be able to stop them, but we can buy time for evacuation shuttles to reach the outer system." "Jake, wait," Kate called out, but the transmission had already ended. Through the window, she could see the 3 human frigates accelerating away from their orbital stations, while the smaller patrol craft formed up behind them. Every person aboard those ships knew they were flying to their deaths, but they went anyway because that's what humans did when their families were threatened. The next few hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. Emergency broadcasts warned civilians to reach underground shelters, while cargo ships loaded with children and essential personnel prepared to flee the system. Kate coordinated the evacuation efforts while Lisa worked frantically to gather intelligence data that might help other human worlds prepare for similar attacks. The first shots were fired when the human fleet reached the halfway point between New Eden and the approaching aliens. Jake's ships opened fire with everything they had, sending streams of missiles and energy blasts toward the massive Vorthon vessels. For a moment, Kate allowed herself to hope as explosions bloomed against alien shields, but then the return fire began. Vorthon plasma cannons tore through human ships like they were made of paper. The patrol craft vanished in brilliant flashes, while the frigates lasted only minutes longer, despite their heavier armor and shields. Jake's flagship held out the longest trading shot for shot with a Vorthon cruiser until a coordinated barrage from 3 enemy ships overwhelmed its defenses. "Jake, come in, please respond." Kate called desperately into her communicator but received only static. In less than 20 minutes, the entire Colonial Defense Fleet had been wiped out, without inflicting any serious damage on the attackers. The Vorthon fleet continued toward New Eden, while orbital defense platforms tried unsuccessfully to slow their advance. The massive alien ships brushed aside humanity's best weapons like annoying insects before turning their attention to the planet itself. Plasma bombardment began raining down on major cities while landing craft deployed toward the surface, carrying ground forces. New Eden's planetary shields flickered and failed under the sustained assault. Communications networks went dark as relay stations were destroyed one by one. The last working transmitter belonged to Lisa's research facility built deep underground with its own power source and quantum entanglement communicator capable of reaching Earth instantly. "This is our only chance," Lisa told Kate as they raced through collapsing corridors toward the communication chamber. "I've compiled everything we learned about their tactics, weapons, and ship designs. Earth needs this information if they're going to have any hope of stopping these things." Kate helped Lisa activate the quantum transmitter, while explosions shook the facility above them. The message would take enormous power to send across the galaxy, and they would only get one chance before the aliens found them. Lisa's fingers flew over the controls encoding military data, tactical analysis, and a desperate plea for help into a single transmission. "Message sent," Lisa announced, just as the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing them in red light, while the sounds of Vorthon soldiers could be heard in the corridors above. Kate took Lisa's hand as they listened to the approaching footsteps. "Do you think anyone will come for us?" Lisa squeezed back gently. "If I know humans, someone will answer that call. They always do." The facility shook as alien forces breached the upper levels searching for survivors. Kate Morrison closed her eyes and thought about the 2 million people counting on leaders like her to never give up hope, even when facing impossible odds. Somewhere across the galaxy, Earth would receive their message and humanity would respond, because that's what families did for each other. The transmission raced through space, carrying New Eden's final cry for help toward a blue world that had never abandoned its children, no matter how dark the situation became. 6 months before New Eden fell, Admiral Helen Carter walked through the massive shipyard orbiting Mars, watching humanity's greatest creation take shape. The USS Leviathan stretched over 3 kilometers from bow to stern, making it the largest warship ever built by human hands. Workers in environment suits crawled over its hull like ants, installing armor plating and weapon systems that represented decades of research and development. Commander Ryan Mitchell followed beside her, studying the technical specifications on his datapad. At 35, he was young for a battleship command, but his record spoke for itself. Mitchell had distinguished himself during the pirate conflicts in the Vega sector, where his innovative tactics saved 3 merchant convoys against overwhelming odds. More importantly, he understood that modern warfare required adaptability over raw firepower. "The quantum torpedo launchers are ready for testing, Admiral," reported Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez as she joined them at the observation deck. Her coveralls were stained with grease and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, but her eyes shone with excitement. "The fusion drives are operating at 98% efficiency, and the Aegis tactical system passed all diagnostic checks." Carter nodded approvingly. The Artificial Enhanced General Intelligence System represented a breakthrough in combat coordination, allowing the ship's computer to process battlefield information faster than any human crew. Critics worried about putting so much trust in machines, but Carter understood that fighting alien technology would require every advantage humanity could develop. Lieutenant Danny Walsh emerged from a nearby lift, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and looking exhausted. As the ship's weapons officer, he had been working 18-hour days calibrating the railgun arrays and particle beam cannons. The Leviathan carried enough firepower to level a small moon, but all that destructive potential meant nothing if the targeting systems couldn't hit their mark. "The main batteries are synchronized, Admiral," Walsh reported, stifling a yawn. "Range testing shows we can engage targets at distances no previous human ship could match. The adaptive armor plating should deflect most energy weapons, while the quantum field generators can absorb kinetic impacts." Carter smiled proudly as she looked out at the enormous vessel. Politicians had questioned the cost and necessity of building such a powerful warship during peacetime, but military leaders understood that preparation prevented catastrophe. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only explored a tiny fraction of it. Somewhere out there, other intelligent species might view humans as threats or prey worth hunting. Commander Mitchell, you'll have 1,200 of our finest officers and crew aboard this ship, Carter said, turning to face the young captain. Every department head was personally selected for their expertise and dedication. The Leviathan represents our ability to defend ourselves against any threat we might encounter. Mitchell saluted crisply. The ship and crew will be ready, Admiral. When do we begin space trials? Next month, assuming final systems integration goes smoothly, Carter replied. We'll start with basic maneuvers and work up to full combat exercises. The Leviathan needs to be perfect before we consider it operational. Dr. Ben Hayes approached carrying a medical kit and looking concerned. As the ship's chief medical officer, he was responsible for keeping 1,200 people healthy in the hostile environment of deep space. The Leviathan's size allowed for extensive medical facilities, including surgical suites and research laboratories, but Hayes worried about treating injuries from weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. Admiral, I've reviewed the crew, psychological profiles, and I have some concerns, Hayes said quietly. Many of our people have never served on a ship this large or complex. The adjustment period could affect combat readiness. That's why we're conducting extensive training exercises, Ben, Carter replied. By the time this ship sees action, every crew member will know their job inside and out. We can't afford mistakes when lives are at stake. Lieutenant Sophie Green joined the group, looking excited about her assignment as tactical officer. Fresh from the Naval Academy, she had earned top honors in strategic planning and sensor analysis. The Leviathan's advanced detection systems could track objects across entire solar systems, giving human commanders unprecedented situational awareness in battle. The long-range scanners are incredible, Admiral Green reported enthusiastically. We can detect and analyze potential threats days before they reach engagement range. Combined with the stealth systems, we should be able to choose when and where to fight. Chief Tactical Officer Maria Santos had been supervising weapons installation when she received word that Admiral Carter wanted to speak with senior staff. At 42, she was the most experienced combat veteran aboard the Leviathan, having served in every major human conflict of the past 2 decades. Santos understood that advanced technology meant nothing without skilled people to operate it. Admiral, the crew is as ready as they're going to be without actual combat experience, Santos said bluntly. We've run thousands of simulations, but nothing truly prepares you for having enemy fire coming your way. The real test will be how well everyone performs under pressure. Carter appreciated Santos's honesty. Combat veterans like her provided stability and experience that younger officers needed to develop their skills. The Leviathan might be humanity's most advanced warship, but wars were still won by people willing to fight for what they believed in. The group was interrupted when urgent alarms began sounding throughout the shipyard. Admiral Carter's communication device crackled to life as Fleet Headquarters transmitted an emergency message. Dr. Lisa Parker's transmission from New Eden had just arrived, carrying news that changed everything humanity thought it knew about galactic security. Admiral, this is Fleet Command, the voice reported grimly. We've received intelligence indicating large-scale alien attacks on our outer colonies. The enemy appears to possess technology superior to our current capabilities. All prototype vessels are being authorized for immediate deployment. Carter felt her blood run cold as she realized the peaceful galaxy humanity had known was about to become a very dangerous place. The Leviathan had been designed as a precaution against theoretical threats, but now those threats were real and heading toward human space with devastating intent. Commander Mitchell, prepare your ship for departure immediately, Carter ordered. We don't have time for extended trials or gradual crew integration. You'll learn on the job while racing to save whatever colonies might still be defending themselves. Mitchell straightened his shoulders, accepting the enormous responsibility being placed on him. Admiral, the Leviathan will answer the call. How long do we have to prepare? 6 weeks to reach the New Eden system, assuming you push the engines to maximum sustainable speed, Carter replied. That transmission contained tactical data about alien capabilities, so use the travel time to develop countermeasures. Humanity is counting on you, Ryan. As the senior staff dispersed to prepare their departments for immediate deployment, Admiral Carter remained at the observation window watching her greatest creation come alive. Emergency lights bathed the Leviathan. In red illumination while supply ships raced to load provisions and ammunition, the peaceful shipyard had become a hive of urgent activity as humanity prepared to answer an alien challenge with its most powerful creation. Carter whispered a quiet prayer for the brave souls about to venture into unknown dangers aboard the prototype battleship. The Leviathan represented humanity's best hope for survival against threats that had already destroyed entire worlds. Whether advanced technology and human determination would be enough remained to be seen, but Carter knew her people would never surrender without a fight. The USS Leviathan dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Eden system, and Commander Ryan Mitchell immediately knew they were too late. The massive view screen showed a dead world, where once thriving colonies had sent regular communications throughout human space. Orbital installations drifted as twisted metal, while the planet's surface bore the scars of systematic bombardment that had left entire continents burning. Lieutenant Sophie Green hunched over her sensor station, analyzing the wreckage of humanity's furthest settlement. Her instruments detected debris patterns consistent with the colonial defense fleet, but no intact human vessels remained to tell their story. The young tactical officer's hands trembled slightly as she realized this was her first glimpse of what alien warfare looked like when directed against her own species. "Commander, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface," Green reported, trying to keep her voice steady. "It appears the aliens have established some kind of mining operation in the northern continent. Multiple ship contacts in orbit suggest they're systematically stripping resources from New Eden, Chief." Medical Officer Dr. Ben Hayes leaned forward at his station as bioscanners swept the planet, searching for any signs of human life. The Leviathan's advanced sensors could detect individual heartbeats from orbit, making them far more sensitive than anything the colonial forces had possessed. What he found gave him the first hope since arriving in this graveyard system. "Commander, I'm detecting approximately 1,500 human life signs concentrated in underground locations across the planet," Hayes announced with obvious relief. "The readings suggest they're in reinforced shelters, probably the emergency bunkers built into every major settlement. They're alive, but trapped." Mitchell felt some tension leave his shoulders, knowing that their desperate race across the galaxy might still save lives. The 6-week journey from Earth had been spent preparing for every possible scenario, but finding survivors meant they had not arrived too late to make a difference. However, freeing those people would require dealing with the alien fleet first. Chief, Tactical Officer Maria Santos studied the enemy force disposition while running combat simulations through the Aegis system. 8 heavy cruisers patrolled in standard formation, while dozens of support vessels moved between the planet and larger command ships. The Vorthon fleet outnumbered the Leviathan dramatically, but Santos had not survived 20 years of combat by being intimidated by unfavorable odds. "Commander, the alien fleet consists of approximately 60 vessels total, including escorts and supply ships," Santos reported. "The 8 cruisers appear to be their main combat units, while the smaller craft are focused on resource extraction. If we engage the entire fleet directly, we'll be overwhelmed within minutes regardless of our technological advantages." Lieutenant Danny Walsh ran targeting solutions through his weapon systems while studying detailed scans of Vorthon ship construction. The intelligence data from New Eden had provided crucial information about alien armor and shielding that allowed human weapons to be calibrated for maximum effectiveness. Still, the numbers strongly favored their enemies. "Commander, our quantum torpedoes should penetrate their shields effectively, and the railguns can punch through their hull plating," Walsh reported. "The problem is they can absorb tremendous damage before losing combat effectiveness. We need to pick our battles carefully and avoid extended engagements." Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez monitored the Leviathan's stealth systems as they approached, the alien fleet undetected. The prototype's advanced cloaking technology bent electromagnetic radiation around the ship's hull, making it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. However, maintaining stealth required enormous power that limited their weapons and propulsion capabilities. "Commander, the stealth field is holding at maximum efficiency," Rodriguez announced. "I can give you approximately 4 hours of full invisibility before we need to decloak and recharge the quantum field generators." After that, we'll be partially visible but still harder to target than conventional vessels. Mitchell studied the HFY tactical display while developing his attack strategy. Direct confrontation would be suicide, but the Leviathan's stealth capabilities opened possibilities that no previous human commander had ever possessed. Rather than fighting the entire alien fleet, he could strike individual targets and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Maria, I want you to identify supply convoys and isolated patrols, Mitchell ordered. We're going to conduct hit-and-run attacks designed to disrupt their operations while avoiding major engagements. Sophie, track their communication patterns and try to predict their response to our attacks. The first strike came without warning when a Vorthon supply convoy moved through the asteroid belt, carrying refined materials from the planet's surface. The Leviathan materialized behind the largest freighter and unleashed a devastating barrage of quantum torpedoes that tore through alien shields like tissue paper. Before the escort vessels could respond, the human battleship vanished back into stealth mode. Over the following days, Mitchell's crew conducted a systematic campaign of harassment that gradually wore down alien morale and resources. Supply ships exploded in brilliant fireballs while patrol craft disappeared without sending distress signals. The Vorthon commanders found themselves fighting an enemy they could barely detect, let alone effectively engage. Dr. Hayes monitored crew stress levels as the prolonged stealth operations took their toll on everyone aboard. Operating under cloak required absolute silence and minimal power consumption that made the ship feel like a tomb. The psychological pressure of hunting vastly superior numbers while avoiding detection tested even veteran officers. Commander, the crew is holding up well considering the circumstances, Hayes reported during a brief medical briefing. Adrenaline and determination are keeping people focused, but we'll need to end this campaign soon before exhaustion becomes a factor. Everyone knows what happens if we're detected. Lieutenant Green tracked Vorthon fleet movements as alien commanders grew increasingly frustrated with their invisible tormentor. Enemy patrols had doubled, while supply convoys traveled with heavy escorts that made them much harder targets. The aliens were learning to adapt, but their rigid tactical doctrines made them predictable. Commander, the aliens are consolidating their forces near the planet, Green announced. It looks like they're preparing to either abandon the system or set a trap using their remaining assets as bait. Long-range sensors show the command ships moving into defensive positions. Santos smiled grimly as she recognized the developing situation. Alien commanders were making the classic mistake of assuming human tactics would follow their own logical patterns. The Vorthon military appeared to rely on overwhelming firepower and predictable battle formations that worked well against conventional opponents but left them vulnerable to unconventional warfare. Commander, they think they're forcing us into a decisive engagement, Santos observed. The alien commander probably believes he's cornered us and wants to end this harassment campaign with superior numbers. That gives us exactly the kind of overconfident enemy we need to spring our own surprise. Mitchell nodded as he studied the tactical display showing alien forces converging near New Eden's largest moon. The Vorthon fleet had arranged itself in a perfect ambush formation, designed to catch the Leviathan between multiple firing positions. What they didn't realize was that humanity's prototype battleship had capabilities they couldn't imagine. Amy, how long until the stealth generators are fully recharged? Mitchell asked his chief engineer. 12 hours, Commander. Assuming we maintain minimal power consumption, Rodriguez replied. After that, we'll have enough stored energy for full combat operations while maintaining partial stealth capability. Sophie, plot an intercept course for the alien formation, Mitchell ordered. Danny, prepare all weapon systems for simultaneous firing. Maria, coordinate with Aegis for maximum targeting efficiency. We're going to show these aliens what happens when they threaten human families. The Leviathan moved silently through space toward what appeared to be certain destruction. 8 enemy cruisers waited in carefully planned positions while support vessels stood ready to assist in humanity's final defeat. What the aliens didn't understand was that they were about to face an opponent whose greatest strength came not from superior technology, but from the unlimited determination of people defending their homes and loved ones.
The trap closed around the USS Leviathan like the jaws of some massive predator as Vorthon cruisers moved into attack positions throughout the asteroid field. Commander Ryan Mitchell watched enemy vessels appear on all sides while his crew prepared for what might be humanity's final battle. The alien commander had chosen his ambush site perfectly, using the rocky debris to mask his ships until the human vessel entered the kill zone. Chief Tactical Officer Maria Santos coordinated target assignments through the Aegis system as 8 enemy cruisers began charging their plasma cannons. The artificial intelligence processed thousands of variables per second, calculating optimal firing solutions, while human intuition provided the creative thinking that machines could never replicate. Together, they represented humanity's best hope against overwhelming odds. "Commander, all weapon systems are ready," announced Lieutenant Danny Walsh from his station. "Quantum torpedoes are loaded and the railgun arrays are fully charged. The particle beam cannons are synchronized for simultaneous firing on your command." Lieutenant Sophie Green tracked enemy movements as the Vorthon fleet tightened their formation. The aliens moved with mechanical precision that suggested rigid tactical training, but little flexibility when facing unexpected situations. Their confidence was evident in how carelessly they exposed their flanks while maneuvering for what they assumed would be an easy victory. "Commander, the enemy cruisers are positioning for coordinated bombardment," Green reported. "They're not taking any chances with our stealth capability and plan to saturate this entire area with weapons fire. Range to nearest target is 2,000 kilometers, and closing Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez monitored power distribution while preparing the Leviathan's defensive systems for unprecedented stress. The prototype's adaptive armor could absorb tremendous punishment, but prolonged combat against superior numbers would test every system to its breaking point. Emergency repair crews stood ready throughout the ship while damage control teams prepared for the worst. "Commander, all defensive systems are operating at maximum efficiency," Rodriguez announced. "The adaptive armor plating is fully charged, and quantum field generators are ready to absorb kinetic impacts. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Dr. Ben Hayes sealed the medical bay and activated emergency protocols while his staff prepared for massive casualties. The Leviathan's crew of 1,200 represented some of humanity's finest people, and losing them would be devastating for the war effort. Hayes refused to consider defeat while wounded friends might need his help. The first Vorthon plasma barrage lit up space with deadly energy as multiple cruisers opened fire simultaneously. Mitchell ordered evasive maneuvers while his weapons crews returned fire with everything the prototype battleship possessed. Quantum torpedoes streaked toward enemy targets, while railgun rounds crossed the void at significant fractions of light speed. The Leviathan shuddered as alien fire struck its shields, but the adaptive armor held firm against the initial assault. Meanwhile, human weapons found their marks as 2 Vorthon cruisers staggered under the impact of quantum torpedoes that overloaded their defensive systems. The aliens had expected easy prey, but instead faced a predator capable of matching their firepower. Direct hits on targets 3 and 7. Walsh reported with satisfaction. "Their shields are failing and we're reading massive internal damage. The quantum torpedoes are more effective than our simulations predicted." Santos smiled grimly as she watched enemy formations waver under human fire. The Vorthon commanders were learning that their technological superiority meant nothing when facing opponents who refused to follow predictable patterns. Human creativity and adaptability were proving more valuable than raw firepower. "Commander, the aliens are attempting to surround us," Green announced as enemy vessels maneuvered for better firing positions. "However, their rigid formation is leaving gaps we can exploit. If we accelerate directly toward the largest cruiser, we can break through their encirclement." Mitchell made the decision that defined human warfare against alien threats. Rather than retreating or trying to escape, he ordered full acceleration toward the enemy flagship while every weapon system fired continuously. The Leviathan charged through devastating plasma fire that would have destroyed any previous human vessel. Rodriguez pushed the fusion drives beyond their design specifications, while emergency systems screamed warnings throughout the ship. Hull. Plating glowed cherry red from absorbed energy, while quantum field generators overloaded, trying to deflect incoming fire. The prototype battleship was taking punishment. No vessel had ever survived, but somehow held together through advanced technology and human determination. Hull breach. On deck 7. Hayes reported as his medical teams responded to wounded crew members. Damage control teams are sealing the compartment, but we're losing atmosphere in section C4. Casualties are surprisingly light, considering the volume of fire we're absorbing. The Leviathan's charge caught the Vorthan flagship unprepared, as human weapons concentrated on a single target instead of spreading fire across multiple enemies. Railgun rounds punched through alien armor, while quantum torpedoes overloaded their power systems, causing cascade failures throughout the massive vessel. The enemy cruiser began breaking apart as internal explosions tore through its hull. Target destroyed, Walsh announced as the alien flagship disintegrated in a brilliant fireball. That's their command vessel eliminated, which should disrupt their coordination. The remaining cruisers appear confused. Without central leadership, Santos recognized the tactical opportunity created by destroying the enemy commander. Vorthan forces relied heavily on centralized control that made them vulnerable when communication networks were disrupted. Human forces had been trained to operate independently, allowing them to exploit situations like this. "Commander, the enemy formation is falling apart," Santos reported. "Individual cruisers are acting without coordination, and several are trying to withdraw from the engagement. If we press our attack now, we can destroy them piecemeal." Mitchell ordered his weapons crews to target the nearest enemy vessel while maneuvering to avoid concentrated fire from the remaining aliens. The Leviathan had taken significant damage, but its adaptive systems were already beginning repairs, while emergency crews worked to restore full combat capability. The prototype was proving more resilient than anyone had dared hope. Green tracked fleeing enemy vessels as Vorthan morale collapsed under human pressure. The aliens had expected easy victory against a single ship, but instead found themselves facing an opponent that grew more dangerous as the battle continued. 3 cruisers were already destroyed, while 2 others showed signs of major damage. "Commander, long-range sensors are detecting additional contacts approaching from the outer system," Green announced with concern. "It appears to be a much larger vessel, possibly their fleet flagship. Estimated arrival time is 30 minutes. Rodriguez checked power levels while calculating whether the Leviathan could survive another major engagement. The ship had exceeded all performance expectations, but extended combat was revealing stress. Fractures in systems never designed for such punishment. They needed time for repairs that the approaching enemy might not allow. "Commander, we're running low on quantum torpedoes, and the main railgun capacitors need recharging," Walsh reported. "I can give you maybe 10 minutes of full-intensity fire before we're limited to secondary weapons." Mitchell studied the tactical situation as the remaining Vorthan cruisers attempted to regroup while their reinforcements approached. The battle had demonstrated human capabilities, but survival required ending this engagement quickly before fresh enemies arrived. The prototype had proven itself, but even advanced technology had limits when facing overwhelming numbers. The tide of battle was turning in humanity's favor, but the real test lay ahead when their damaged ship would face whatever monster the aliens were sending to crush Earth's defiance. Mitchell looked around at his crew and saw the same determination that had carried humanity to the stars burning in every face. They would meet whatever came next with the same courage that had won this. First victory against impossible odds.
The Vorthan dreadnought emerged from behind New Eden's moon like some ancient god of war, awakening to punish mortals who dared challenge divine authority. The massive vessel stretched over 5 kilometers from bow to stern, making it twice the size of the USS Leviathan while bristling with enough weapons to sterilize entire worlds. Commander Ryan Mitchell watched the monster approach, knowing that everything humanity had achieved in this battle would mean nothing if this final opponent proved unstoppable. Lieutenant Sophie Green ran continuous sensor sweeps of the alien flagship, while her instrument struggled to process readings that defied conventional understanding. The dreadnought's power output exceeded anything in human databases, while its weapon systems appeared capable of destroying fleets rather than individual ships. The young tactical officer forced herself to focus on finding weaknesses rather than being overwhelmed by the enemy's apparent invincibility. Commander, the alien vessel is heavily armed with plasma cannons, particle beams, and what appear to be some kind of gravity weapons, Green reported with forced calm. Its shields are generating power levels equivalent to a small star, while the hull appears to be constructed from materials we can't identify. Range is 15,000 kilometers and closing. Chief Tactical Officer Maria Santos studied the approaching dreadnought while Aegis analyzed every detail of its construction and capabilities. The artificial intelligence system processed thousands of variables searching for tactical advantages that human crews might miss during the stress of combat. What it found was not encouraging, but Santos had faced overwhelming odds before and survived through skill, determination, and luck. Commander, their weapons range appears superior to ours by at least 30%, Santos announced. However, the vessel's enormous size makes it less maneuverable than our ship. If we can get close enough, our superior agility might allow us to avoid their heaviest fire while targeting critical systems. Lieutenant Danny Walsh checked ammunition levels while preparing the Leviathan's remaining weapons for what would likely be their final engagement. The quantum torpedoes had proven devastatingly effective against standard Vorthon cruisers, but this monster might require concentrated fire from every system simultaneously. Walsh had never faced a target this large and wondered if human weapons possessed enough destructive power. Commander, we have 6 quantum torpedoes remaining plus full charges for the railgun arrays and particle beam cannons, Walsh reported. I recommend concentrating all fire on a single target area rather than spreading our attacks across their entire hull. We need to punch through their defenses quickly before they can bring their superior firepower to bear, Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez monitored damage reports while emergency crews worked frantically to repair systems strained beyond their design limits. The Leviathan had survived the earlier battle, but significant damage to power conduits and armor plating made another major engagement extremely dangerous. Rodriguez knew her ship was running on determination rather than optimal performance. Commander, we've restored main power to all weapon systems, but the adaptive armor is operating at only 60% effectiveness, Rodriguez reported. The quantum field generators are functional but overheating after the last engagement. One more major hit to our defensive systems could prove catastrophic. Dr. Ben Hayes coordinated medical teams throughout the ship while preparing for casualties that might exceed their treatment capabilities. The earlier battle had been won with surprisingly few serious injuries, but facing the alien dreadnought would test human resilience to its absolute limits. Hayes refused to consider the possibility that his patients might not survive to receive treatment. The alien commander opened communication channels broadcasting a message in heavily accented human language that chilled everyone who heard it. The voice carried absolute confidence mixed with contempt for the species that dared resist Vorthon expansion into what they considered their rightful territory. Every word dripped with the arrogance of a superior race addressing primitives. Human vessel, you have caused considerable annoyance with your crude tactics and inferior technology, the alien commander announced. Surrender immediately, and we will grant your crew quick deaths rather than the prolonged suffering reserved for those who defy the Vorthon Empire. Your resistance ends now. Mitchell activated the communication system while studying the tactical display showing both vessels approaching each other like ancient knights preparing for single combat. The outcome of this duel would determine whether humanity remained free or joined the countless other species crushed beneath Vorthon expansion. Everything humanity had ever achieved or might accomplish depended on the next few minutes. This is Commander Ryan Mitchell of the USS Leviathan, representing the United Earth Defense Forces. He replied with calm authority. We don't surrender to bullies and we don't abandon our people. If you want this system, you'll have to take it from us. The alien dreadnought opened fire with weapons that turned space itself into a storm of destructive energy. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids focused on the Leviathan, while gravity weapons attempted to crush the human vessel like an empty can. Mitchell ordered maximum evasion while his crew returned fire with everything their damaged ship could produce. The Leviathan danced through the alien barrage like a fighter avoiding a giant's clumsy swings while its weapons searched for vulnerable points on the massive enemy vessel. Quantum torpedoes detonated against alien shields, creating brilliant explosions that briefly illuminated both ships locked in mortal combat. Railgun rounds struck armor plating designed to withstand the fury of stellar radiation. We're scoring hits, but their defenses are absorbing most of our firepower, Walsh reported as he watched his weapons impact harmlessly against alien shields. I need a weak point or we'll run out of ammunition before causing significant damage. Rodriguez pushed the fusion drives to emergency power while the Leviathan spiraled around its massive opponent, avoiding weapons that could vaporize the human ship with a single direct hit. The prototype's superior maneuverability was keeping them alive, but couldn't continue indefinitely against such overwhelming firepower. They needed to end this fight quickly. Santos coordinated with Aegis to analyze the dreadnought's energy distribution patterns while searching for the vulnerability that every ship possessed regardless of size or construction. The artificial intelligence processed sensor data faster than any human mind, while Maria's combat experience provided intuition that guided the search toward critical systems. Commander, I'm detecting power fluctuations near their main reactor core, Santos announced with sudden excitement. It appears their energy grid can't handle full power to both weapons and shields simultaneously. If we can force them to choose between offense and defense, we might create an opening. Green tracked the alien vessel's movements while coordinating targeting data with the weapon systems. The young officer had learned more about space combat in this single battle than most people experienced in entire careers. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, despite the terror that threatened to overwhelm rational thought. Commander, they're rotating to bring their heaviest weapons to bear, Green reported. However, that maneuver is exposing their portside reactor housing. It's only a small target, but our remaining quantum torpedoes might be able to penetrate their armor at close range. Mitchell made the decision that would either save humanity's prototype battleship or destroy it in one final desperate gamble. Rather than continuing evasive maneuvers, he ordered full acceleration directly toward the alien dreadnought, while concentrating all remaining firepower on the reactor housing that Santos had identified. The Leviathan charged through a hurricane of alien fire while its crew held their breath, knowing that death could come in the next few seconds. Emergency systems screamed warnings as hull plating vaporized under direct hits from weapons designed to destroy capital ships. Only the prototypes, advanced construction and human determination, kept the vessel intact. All remaining quantum torpedoes launched, Walsh announced as the Leviathan's final weapons streaked toward their target. Impact in 15 seconds. All crews brace for possible shockwave. The universe held its breath as 6 quantum torpedoes struck the dreadnought's reactor housing in perfect synchronization, while the alien commander realized too late what the humans had discovered about his ship's weakness. The massive vessel shuddered as cascade failures spread through its power grid, triggering explosions that tore through supposedly impenetrable armor. Direct hit, Green shouted as the alien dreadnought began breaking apart. Their main reactor is going critical. All nearby vessels should clear the area immediately. Rodriguez pushed the damaged engines beyond any safe operating parameters, while the Leviathan raced away from the disintegrating alien flagship. Behind them, 5 kilometers of advanced technology collapsed into expanding debris as the dreadnought's death throes illuminated the battlefield with the brilliance of a small star. The explosion faded, leaving only silence and floating wreckage, where moments before humanity had faced extinction. Mitchell looked around at his crew, seeing exhaustion, relief, and pride in faces that had witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history.